In a bustling city in southern Nigeria, Pastor Emmanuel Kane was a name spoken with admiration and awe. The lead shepherd of Living Truth Ministries, he was known for his passionate sermons, fiery prayers, and charismatic presence. Every Sunday, hundreds gathered to hear him speak, some standing outside the packed hall just to catch a glimpse of the man they believed was God's messenger. But while the public saw a spiritual leader, few knew what happened behind the pulpit. In his grand office, scented with imported cologne and lit by a soft chandelier glow, Pastor Kane reclined in his leather chair. The walls were lined with awards, framed sermons, and plaques of honor. His phone buzzed. A message lit up the screen. God sees all. Turn from your ways before it's too late. He smirked, deleted it, and carried on. Elsewhere in the city, Chioma Nwosu was trying to keep her world from crumbling. Her mother was gravely ill, the medical bills unending. Desperation had forced her to take a job as Pastor Kane's personal assistant. Many congratulated her on the divine opportunity, but for Chioma, it was survival. Chioma had her own secret. She was HIV positive, a reality she had kept to herself. Not even her closest friends knew. She feared the judgment, the pity, and the loss of any chance at a normal life. On her first day at the church, she wore a neat pink blouse and a navy skirt. Her hands trembled as she knocked on Pastor Kane's door. "Come in," came the deep voice. Chioma stepped in. "Good afternoon, sir," she greeted with a polite smile. Pastor Kane stood and offered his hand with a warm smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You must be Chioma Nwosu. I've heard great things about you." "Thank you, sir," she replied, her voice soft but steady. He gestured for her to sit. "This job will demand loyalty, sacrifice, and dedication to the work of God. Are you ready?" "I am, sir." "Good. We're a family here. We protect each other, trust each other. If anything troubles you, come to me directly." "Yes, sir. Thank you." As Chioma exited the office, something inside her twisted. Pastor Kane's smile, too polished, too smooth, didn't sit right with her. But she reminded herself, this was just a job. She needed the money. She would stay strong. What she didn't realize was that this opportunity might cost her more than she ever imagined. 2 weeks into her new role at Living Truth Ministries, Chioma Nwosu found herself adjusting to the demanding rhythm of the job. She handled Pastor Emmanuel Kane's schedule with precision, arranging meetings, replying to messages, and organizing church events. From the outside, everything seemed perfect. "Chioma, you're doing well," Pastor Kane said one afternoon as she handed him a folder. "You're smart, dedicated. I wish all my staff had your spirit." "Thank you, sir," Chioma replied with a polite smile. But as the days passed, Chioma started noticing the tone behind his compliments. They weren't just words of encouragement. They lingered too long, cut too deep. One morning, she walked into the office in a modest peach dress. Pastor Kane looked up and smiled. "That color suits you," he said. "You have very good taste." Chioma felt a strange discomfort crawling over her skin. "Thank you, sir," she murmured, looking away quickly. That evening, as she prepared to leave, his voice came through the intercom. "Chioma, please step into my office before you go." She hesitated, then knocked. "Come in," he called, his tone smooth as always. He gestured toward the seat across from him. "I want to talk," he said. Chioma sat cautiously, notebook in hand, expecting another task, but instead Pastor Kane leaned forward. "You're different," he said slowly. "Not just hard-working, but graceful, beautiful. Do people tell you that?" Chioma blinked. "I don't think about it, sir. I just try to do my work well. He chuckled. That's good. But a woman like you should know her worth. You deserve appreciation. Her pulse quickened. Thank you, sir. But I should finish what you assigned me. I'll see you tomorrow. She stood quickly. Wait, he said, his voice low. There are opportunities in life that come only once. You're in a position many women would envy. Think about that. Chioma didn't respond. She nodded faintly and walked out, her mind clouded with unease. That night, she tossed in bed, replaying his words. You deserve to be appreciated. Many women would envy your position. Was it a warning? A test? She couldn't tell, but something inside her whispered, this isn't just about work anymore. She thought of her mother back in the village, growing weaker by the day. The hospital bills, the money she needed, and how badly she couldn't afford to lose this job. I'll just focus, she told herself. Ignore the rest. But deep down Chioma knew Pastor Kane's attention wasn't going away, and what was coming next might be worse than she imagined. Chioma sat quietly at her desk, organizing Pastor Kane's files and updating his weekly schedule. The hum of the church office filled the room, phones ringing, footsteps echoing, whispers of staff going about their day. It had been almost a month since she started working for Living Truth Ministries, and though everything looked normal on the outside, something dark was brewing underneath. The compliments had become more frequent, the lingering glances, the subtle power plays. One afternoon, just as she prepared to leave, the intercom buzzed. Chioma, please see me in my office. She stood slowly, a pit growing in her stomach. She knocked and walked in. Come in, Pastor Kane said, his voice unusually warm. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit, we need to talk. Chioma sat down, notebook in hand, though she had a feeling she wouldn't be writing anything this time. You know you've been doing an exceptional job, Pastor Kane began, his tone almost fatherly. You're not just efficient, you have presence. Thank you, sir, she said softly, not meeting his gaze. He leaned forward. I see the way the other men in the church look at you, but you're mine to protect. You understand that, don't you? Chioma froze. Sir, I don't quite understand what you mean. He chuckled. You're smart. I think you do. She stood up, quickly collecting herself. If there's nothing else, I'd like to return to my duties. But Pastor Kane's smile faded. His voice turned cold. Don't forget, Chioma. Many young women would kill for this position. Loyalty comes with sacrifice. I hope you're wise enough to remember that. She paused, her hand on the doorknob. Her throat felt dry. Her heart was pounding. I'm here to work, sir. Nothing more. Of course, he said with a thin smile. For now. That night, Chioma lay on her mattress in her small flat, eyes wide open. The fan creaked overhead. She stared at the ceiling as tears slipped down her cheeks. She felt trapped. If she lost this job, she couldn't pay her mother's hospital bills. But if she stayed, what was the cost of her silence? She thought about recording the conversations, saving the messages, keeping evidence. Just in case. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Don't trust the mask. Protect yourself. Chioma sat up, chills running through her. Someone else knew. But who? And why now? 1 week later, Chioma arrived at work like any other day. She had decided to stay quiet, stay focused, and avoid anything that would draw Pastor Kane's attention. But something felt off the moment she stepped into the church office. People weren't making eye contact. Whispers followed her through the hallway. When she reached her desk, she noticed a plain white envelope placed neatly on top. Her heart dropped before she even opened it. The letter read, "This is to inform you that your services are no longer required. Please return all church property immediately. Management." Her hands trembled. She blinked hard, reading the words again. Fired. No explanation. No warning. She marched straight to Pastor Kane's office, but his personal bodyguard stepped in her way. "He's busy," the guard said flatly, refusing to meet her eyes. Chioma stood frozen, her voice caught in her throat. Just tell him I need to talk to him. Please." "I said he's busy." She turned away, her eyes stinging. She picked up her small box of belongings and walked out of the church, head low, heart shattered. The sky was overcast. Rain threatened to fall at any moment. It matched how she felt, like a storm was coming, and she had no shelter. Back at home, Chioma sat on her small mattress, staring at the letter. No job, no income, and her mother's hospital needed payment by the end of the week. Her phone rang. It was the clinic. She didn't pick up. She couldn't bear to hear the words, "We can't continue treatment unless you pay." That night, hunger gnawed at her stomach as hopelessness wrapped around her like a cold blanket. She had always believed in hard work, in honesty, but what had it given her? Nothing. Her mind kept flashing back to that smirk on Pastor Kane's face, the power he wielded, the way he acted like he owned her. She clenched her fists. "I won't let this go," she whispered. "He did this to me." But what could she do? He was Pastor Emmanuel Kane, the man of God, the leader of thousands, and she was nobody. Just one girl with nothing left to lose. Weeks had passed since Chioma Nwosu was dismissed from her job at Living Truth Ministries. Her small apartment now echoed with silence and worry. Her mother's medical bills had piled up. Rent was overdue. The little money she had left was barely enough to buy food. Chioma sat on the floor of her room, legs folded, staring at the last crumpled note in her hand. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. Hunger was becoming too familiar. Her phone vibrated. It was the hospital again. She turned it over and placed it face down. "I need help," she whispered, swallowing her pride. That morning, she wore her best dress, a long faded green gown, and made her way back to the church. As she stood in the church compound, she debated walking away, but desperation kept her rooted. She approached the reception desk. "I'd like to see Pastor Kane." The secretary looked confused, but before she could answer, the office door opened. Pastor Emmanuel Kane stepped out, adjusting his collar. His eyes landed on Chioma, and his brows lifted slightly. "Chioma," he said flatly, "what are you doing here?" She stood, forcing a polite smile. "Good afternoon, sir. Please, I need to speak with you. Just for a moment." He looked around, then gestured for her to follow him back into his office. Inside, he sat comfortably in his leather chair. "I didn't expect to see you again." "I'm sorry, sir," Chioma said, her voice cracking. "I must have done something wrong, but things are really hard. I need my job back. Please." Pastor Kane studied her for a long moment. Then he leaned back, his lips curling into a knowing smile. "You need it that badly?" "Yes, sir." He stood and walked toward her slowly, his voice lowering. "You once said you were loyal, but when I offered you something more, you walked away. Now you come back, ready to do anything." Chioma hesitated, every bone in her body screaming for her to walk away. But then she thought of her mother, of the hospital bed, of the helpless nights. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. "I'll do whatever is required." His eyes gleamed. "Good. Come back on Monday. And remember, Chioma, loyalty isn't just about showing up. It's about knowing your place." Chioma left the office, her chest heavy, her steps unsteady. She hated herself for coming back. But this time, she would not be naive. She had a plan. She would play along, but she would also record every message, every conversation. Because if he tried to destroy her again, she would make sure he didn't rise from the ashes. Not this time. It began with a phone call. One quiet evening, Chioma sat in her room, staring at her mother's prescription notes, wondering how long she could keep this up. Her phone buzzed. It was him. Chioma, Pastor Kane said smoothly. I need to see you tonight. Not at the office, somewhere more private. Where, sir? She asked, playing dumb, though she already knew what he meant. I'll text you the hotel address. Be there by 9. Don't be late. The call ended. Her chest tightened. She stared at her reflection in the mirror. You're not doing this for him, she whispered. You're doing this for survival, for evidence, for justice. That night, she arrived at the hotel, wearing a plain blouse and jeans. She knocked on the room door with trembling hands. Pastor Kane opened the door, dressed casually, a strange smirk on his face. Come in, he said. Inside, the lights were dim. The air smelled of expensive cologne and secrets. He loosened his tie as he sat on the edge of the bed. You look tense, he said, patting the space beside him. Relax. I'm fine, sir, Chioma said, standing stiffly. He moved closer, placing a hand on her knee. You don't need to call me sir here. I want you to be comfortable. She nodded, barely able to breathe. Her phone, tucked in her purse, was already recording. This would become routine. After Sunday services, random weekday evenings, hotel rooms and envelopes of money. Use this for your mother's treatment, he would say, handing her wads of cash wrapped in church envelopes. What shocked Chioma more than anything was his recklessness. He never used protection. I'm a servant of God, he once said proudly. God protects his own. She wanted to scream, to expose him right there. But she didn't. She kept her face calm. She kept her voice quiet. And she kept the recordings. Voice notes, screenshots, text messages. Everything was stored in a hidden folder on her phone, backed up to the cloud. At night when the shame hit her the hardest, she reminded herself, he started this. He took advantage of my need. He played God. He will answer for it. Meanwhile, Pastor Kane continued preaching with fire and passion on Sundays, lifting hands to the sky, calling on heaven to rain blessings. To the world, he was untouchable. To Chioma, he was a man whose time was running out. Miriam Kane sat alone in the living room, the television playing in the background, but her eyes were fixed on her husband's face, glowing on his phone screen as he scrolled endlessly. It had become a routine. After church, he would lock himself in his study, glued to his phone, replying to church messages at odd hours. But Miriam wasn't blind. She had noticed the shift, the late-night meetings, the sudden kindness to Chioma, the way he now recoiled when she tried to hold his hand in public. That evening, she broke the silence. Emmanuel, you've been on that phone all day. I'm handling ministry work, he replied, not looking up. She observed him quietly. You've changed. I'm just busy, he said, already rising to head into his office. That night, long after he had fallen asleep, Miriam lay in bed wide awake, staring at the ceiling. Her heart ached, not just from betrayal, but from the feeling of being made a fool in front of the church, her own people. The next morning, she made a decision. At the church, she called Chioma into her office. Good morning, Ma, Chioma said, cautiously entering and taking a seat. Miriam folded her arms. Chioma, I'm a woman, And women know when something is off. Tell me the truth. What's going on between you and my husband? Chioma's heart skipped. Ma, I don't understand. Don't lie to me. I respect you and Pastor. I would never. Miriam leaned forward. I see how uncomfortable you get when I'm around. I see how he looks at you. I've kept quiet, but not anymore. Chioma bit her lip. I'm not doing anything wrong. Miriam narrowed her eyes. If you're doing anything you shouldn't be doing, it won't end well for you. That's not a threat. It's a promise. Chioma nodded, hiding her trembling hands. Yes, Ma. As she stepped out of the office, her knees weak, she knew things were closing in. Later that evening, Miriam called her oldest friend, Sister Joy. I need help, she confessed. Then get proof. Don't confront him without it, Joy advised. Hire someone. Find the truth. That night, Miriam sat in her car with the business card of a private investigator clenched in her hand. You think you're smart, Emmanuel, she thought, staring at the glowing lights of the church. Let's see how smart you really are when the truth comes knocking. And somewhere across town, Chioma sat on her bed, deleting messages, securing backups, unaware that she wasn't the only one gathering evidence. The storm was brewing, and the truth was on its way. 2 weeks later, Miriam Kane's phone rang. It was a number she had saved under a fake name. This is Madam Grace, the private investigator said. We have something. Miriam gripped the phone tighter. Go on. Your husband, Pastor Emmanuel Kane, was seen entering a hotel last night. He wasn't alone. Her stomach twisted. With who? The young lady from the church, Chioma Nwosu. Miriam closed her eyes. The confirmation was bitter but not unexpected. I have pictures. Very clear ones, he added. I'll send them to you now. Moments later, her phone buzzed again. Images of her husband, her so-called man of God, hand in hand with Chioma, walking into a hotel lobby, one after the other, his arm brushing her back, her eyes downcast. Rage and sadness mixed in Miriam's chest like fire and gasoline. But she didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, she waited. She wanted the perfect moment, the one where truth couldn't be ignored or denied. It was a bright Sunday morning. The church was packed. Pastor Kane stood at the altar, preaching about purity, about discipline, about loyalty to God. Chioma stood in the back corner, avoiding his gaze. After the service, a special meeting with the elders was scheduled, supposedly to discuss ministry expansion. Pastor Kane sat at the head of the long mahogany table, flanked by the elders. He looked pale, weak. His voice was raspy from lack of sleep. Chioma stood silently in the background, summoned only to take notes. Then, the door burst open. Miriam Kane walked in, head held high, her heels clicking sharply on the tiled floor. In her hands, a thick brown envelope. Excuse me, elders, she said. I have something important to share. Gasps filled the room. Pastor Kane stood up. Miriam, what are you doing? She ignored him and handed the envelope to the head elder. These are pictures of my husband with one of the staff, Chioma Nwosu. Chioma froze. The elder pulled out the photos, and murmurs turned into shouts. Pastor Emmanuel, what is this? One elder demanded. It's not what it looks like, Pastor Kane said, panic rising. These are fake. They've been edited. Miriam scoffed. Edited? Shall I call the investigator to testify? The room exploded in argument, some elders furious, others in disbelief. Chioma tried to speak, but Miriam turned to her, eyes blazing. Don't say a word. You knew he was married. You knew. I didn't want. You wanted something. Miriam snapped. You got it. Now face it. Pastor Kane's voice cracked as he tried to defend himself, but the damage was done. The photos said it all. The head elder finally slammed the table. This matter must be addressed publicly. The congregation deserves to know. Chioma's legs were shaking. Her world had just shattered. In the same moment, Pastor Kane's had begun to collapse. But deep down she knew. This was only the beginning. It had been 3 days since the elders' meeting exploded into chaos. Chioma hadn't left her apartment. Her name was already circulating on social media. WhatsApp groups, church rumor mills. Every click of her phone brought another whisper, another version of the story she never wanted to tell. And then came the knock. Firm, repetitive, urgent. She opened the door slowly. 2 uniformed police officers stood outside. Miss Chioma Noosu. Yes, you are under arrest for knowingly transmitting HIV to Pastor Emmanuel Kane. The words hit like a slap. What? She whispered, stunned. The officer stepped forward. You're accused of endangering his life by hiding your medical status. No, that's not true. He knew. He never even asked for protection. You can explain at the station, the officer said, pulling out handcuffs. Please, just let me grab my slippers, she begged, her voice shaking. People had already started gathering. Neighbors peeked from windows. Someone pulled out a phone to record. Whispers filled the air like fire on dry leaves. Is that the girl from that church scandal? She infected the pastor. They said she's dangerous. The shame cut deeper than the cuffs. At the police station, Chioma sat across from a senior officer. His expression was cold but curious. Miss Noosu, he began. You admit there was a relationship? Her voice cracked. Yes, but I didn't force him. He knew. I told him. Once. He didn't care. He said he was covered by God. You didn't get it in writing. You didn't record that. Chioma paused. Then slowly she nodded. I did. I recorded everything. The officer's eyebrows rose. You have recordings? Yes. And messages. I backed them up. I knew something like this would happen. You'll need to provide those. I will. The officer stood. Until then you'll remain in custody. As they led her to the holding cell, she clutched her phone tightly. This wasn't just about scandal anymore. This was war. But she had the truth on her side, and evidence in her hands. And no matter how loud Pastor Kane's lies became, she was ready to speak louder. The courtroom was packed. The media had picked up the scandal. Church members, reporters, curious strangers, all crowded in, waiting to hear the end of the story that had rocked an entire city. Chioma Noosu sat quietly at the defendant's table. Her hands trembled, but her eyes stayed steady. Barrister Okechukwu, her lawyer, leaned in. Stay calm. We have the evidence. Just breathe. Across the room, Pastor Emmanuel Kane sat pale and thin, his once powerful frame sunken with stress. His wife Miriam sat in the gallery, her arms crossed tightly, lips pressed in stone. The judge banged the gavel. We will now begin. Pastor Kane's lawyer went first. This is not a case of mere workplace drama. This is a case of intentional harm, he said, gesturing toward Chioma. My client was misled, used and infected by someone who withheld crucial health information. Chioma sat stiffly, as all eyes turned to her. Then it was Barrister Okechukwu's turn. My client is not the abuser. She is the abused. She was blackmailed, manipulated, and forced into a relationship with a man who used God as a cover. He held up a USB drive. These are voice recordings. Here's one message. Don't forget who gave you this job. If you want to keep it, you know what to do. Gasps echoed across the room. The judge listened. Then the private investigator took the stand, confirming the meetings, the hotels, and the pattern of behavior. One by one, more women came forward. One said he promised her a scholarship. Another said he used prayer as an excuse to touch her. Each story was a brick in the wall of truth. Chioma sat frozen, tears in her eyes, as other women told their pain. She wasn't alone. Not anymore. Finally, Pastor Cain was called to testify. "I was weak," he stammered, "but I didn't hurt anyone intentionally." "Did you know her status before your relationship began?" the judge asked. Pastor Cain paused, then nodded. "Yes." The courtroom fell silent, and that was it. The judge's voice echoed with finality. After reviewing the evidence, the court finds Chioma Nwosu not guilty of the charges. It is evident that Pastor Emmanuel Cain abused his position, and that the accusations against the defendant were retaliatory. Relief swept over Chioma like a wave. She exhaled, tears flowing freely now, not from fear but release. But it didn't end there. The judge continued. An inquiry will be opened into Pastor Emmanuel Cain's conduct. The ministry board is urged to take disciplinary action immediately. Pastor Cain lowered his head, broken. His wife walked out without looking back. As Chioma stepped out of the courtroom, people murmured, "She was telling the truth. God doesn't sleep." He wore the robe, but his heart was filthy. She looked up at the sky, her heart still heavy, but her spirit finally free. The battle was over, but her journey had just begun. Chioma relocated to a new city, with help from a women's advocacy group. She began rebuilding her life, working with organizations to help young girls recognize abuse and speak out. She would never forget what happened, but now she had a voice, and she wasn't afraid to use it.